After a moment, Lin Tian remembered something from his past life when he encountered Lair and Evely. She had used a binding spell to trap him, and he couldn't escape. His mind suddenly clicked. That's right, the binding spell that Evely used on me. Lin Tian thought, if I can use this on those creatures, it would be great. He smiled and stroked his chin. So the problem is already solved, right? Haha, it's time to check on Evely. After that, he confidently walked back to the Goblin tribe. After Lin Tian took control, the tribe had established a clear order. The Goblins' huts were organized closely together. A goblin with purple hair, one of Lin Tian's subordinates, was carrying a basin of hot water, as instructed. He quickly arrived and smiled obsequiously, then proudly reported, "Boss, I've completed the task you gave me. The human is now living in misery." Lin Tian responded indifferently, "Not bad." He reached out to take a warm towel from the basin and walked towards Evely, who was lying helplessly on the ground. When Evely heard her praise from the boss, she laughed bitterly and placed the basin of water down. She stepped back and looked up at Lin Tian from the ground. "In my past life, you captured and used me as a test subject. Now, the tables have turned. Look who is pleading for salvation." Lin Tian walked toward Evely, who was chained and gasping for breath. Her eyes had become empty and lifeless, and she could only beg for help. Lin Tian crouched down and whispered, "Hello, Evely." In her despair, Evely prayed to God, hoping for mercy and rescue. Suddenly, warmth spread across her shoulder as someone began to wipe the dirt from it. Reacting instinctively, Evely looked toward that person. "It's so warm." "Who is it?" A reflection of a goblin appeared in her sight, causing Evely to immediately panic. She quickly sat up, shaking off Lin Tian's hand and trembling in fear. "No, I don't want you near me." Her eyes filled with terror as she desperately tried to move away from him, shrinking herself. Lin Tian observed her reaction without saying anything, calmly watching her every move. Evely felt as if she were trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. She wrapped her hands around her head, screaming in agony. "Damn, devil! I'm going crazy. It's so painful." Seeing her act so insane, Lin Tian found it quite bothersome. Screaming like that will mess up my plans. He decided to apply a little physics to the situation. He swung his hand and slapped her cheek, causing her to immediately fall silent, stunned. Lin Tian was convinced that a little slap would make her behave. Lin Tian immediately took advantage of this opportunity to hold the small figure of Evely. He knelt on one knee and embraced her in his arms. His hands gently stroked her hair as he comforted her. "Your punishment is over now, Evely." In her panic, she could only open her eyes wide and stare into space. Upon hearing this, her shoulders shook slightly. Her hands reached out toward Lin Tian as if she had found a life-saving straw. Her brows furrowed lightly, and tears continued to fall as she looked at him, as if he were her last hope in this hellish place. She trembled and gripped him tightly, stammering, "Really?" Seeing Evely calm down, Lin Tian gently helped her sit down. His hand caressed her face, his gaze exceptionally gentle as he looked into her eyes and spoke. "I keep my promises, but the condition is that I want you to choose your belief again." Evely seemed lost in a daze, sinking into his gentle gaze. She seemed to not understand what he said. Her small lips parted as she asked, "What belief?" Evely furrowed her brows, still crying, tears falling one by one. Lin Tian calmly explained, "It's the choice of the god you believe in." Lin Tian knew that one must strike while the iron is hot. He reached up and rubbed her head to calm her, softly coaxing her. "Choose me. Trust me. Become my pet, and save yourself from the pain you've endured all these days." She heard this, and her body instinctively shuddered. She hugged herself, praying, lowering her head as if she were thinking about something. The next moment, she suddenly imitated the sound of a dog barking. She then slowly crawled to Lin Tian, grabbing his hand and raising it as if it were a precious object, bringing it to her mouth and licking it non-stop, murmuring, "Master, Master." Seeing the plan half successful, Lin Tian quickly raised his hand to adjust her hair and smiled gently, saying, "Very good, Evely." He stood up and looked down at her, still kneeling on the ground. He smirked and said to her, "From now on, I am your only master. I will call you Little Dog." Evely barely paid attention to this. She only knew that the man in front of her was the only one who could save her from the deepest despair. No matter what he asked her to do, she would comply, as long as she could escape from her current situation. Her empty, lifeless eyes looked at him. She smiled with joy, crawling forward to flatter him. "Woof, woof, master." Seeing her submissive and obedient demeanor, Lin Tian was very pleased. He gently picked her up in his arms and said, "Follow me." He then walked toward the steaming hot bath. She reached out with both hands to embrace him, keeping her balance to avoid falling. She also relaxed a little, letting go of the tattered cloth and the chains, which clinked as they fell. Lin Tian gently lifted her into the water, carefully and tenderly helping her clean her body. Evely joyfully clasped her hands in front of her chest, feeling immensely happy as she enjoyed the hot water. This was the best thing in this dark period of her life. She closed her eyes lightly, feeling the warmth around her. "My godly master, you are so good to me. I am willing to try my best to serve you." After helping her clean up, Lin Tian adjusted her position to make her more comfortable as she sat in the water. The high temperature made her fair skin turn a light pink. Upon hearing her words, Lin Tian knew the time had come. He smiled and whispered in her ear, "Really? Evely. What a coincidence." Lin Tian quickly seized the opportunity and made a request. His face was full of excitement. "Evely, I want to see how you use the Holy Light Prison skill." Her mind was in a daze as she looked at him with a confused expression. "Holy Light Prison? Master, what is that?" Lin Tian led her to a place and took out a magic book from the elf tribe. He opened it and placed it on a stone table. Evely looked at it for a moment and was stunned. "Is this the Holy Light Prison?" She then began to cast the spell and chant the incantation. Lin Tian stood with his arms crossed, watching from behind as golden patterns from the book appeared more and more in the air. Suddenly, her body was lifted by the golden light. The chanting grew faster, and then she stretched her arms wide. A large cross-shaped prison formed, enveloping a space right in front of them. Looking from behind, Lin Tian was not the least bit doubtful about Evely's power. He was very pleased with the result. This would make the next phase of his plan easier. He smiled, stroked her chin, and then praised her. "This is it, Evely. You did well." Lin Tian had gotten what he wanted, and he was in a very good mood as he led Evely back to the Goblin tribe. Walking past the prisons, they heard the sound of footsteps. The tortured Lower, still not dead, quickly turned his head. "Is that Evely? It's really her, isn't it? Why is she there?" "Never mind. It's not important." He immediately stood up, excited, and shouted, "Has Evely recovered? Quick, kill that Goblin and use magic to restore my body. Hurry!" But Evely remained standing in place, motionless, her expression seemingly not reacting. Not knowing him, Lin Tian laughed loudly as he looked at Lower's shabby appearance, like a dog. He couldn't help but laugh aloud. "Can't you see? She has willingly surrendered to me." Lower, in anger, shouted loudly in his excitement and gripped the iron rod, making a grinding noise. How could the daughter of the holy church leader be tamed so easily by a Goblin? As if to prove his words, Lin Tian patted Evely's head. She quickly bent down and knelt on the ground, seemingly wanting to mock Lower. Lin Tian turned to Evely and said, "Tell him, did you do this willingly?" Hearing his voice, she rubbed against his leg a few times and then replied, "Of course, my master. Everything is by Evely's own will." Witnessing the entire event, Lower couldn't believe it. He slumped down, his face turning pale, as if the faint hope he once had was now crushed by the harsh reality. His body trembled, and he loosened his grip on the iron rod. Not knowing what to think, he suddenly began to laugh manically, as if he had lost his mind. Your actions will cause the Goblin race to disappear from this world." He laughed hysterically, saliva spraying on the ground. His face twisted with madness, and despair gnawed at him with every passing second, making him go insane. He could only scream to alleviate his suffering. "The purpose of your existence is to be slaughtered by humans. The Holy Church will kill all of you." "Ha ha ha!" Hearing Lower mention Evelyn's identity in such a way truly surprised Lin Tian. She, in fact, had such a background? He hadn't thought that Evelyn had such an identity. Evelyn, however, seemed completely oblivious to Lower's words. She just leaned against Lin Tian and embraced him, standing there, looking at Lower struggling behind the bars. She smiled and said, "Thank you for telling me such important intelligence. I should reward you properly." Then he ordered one of the nearby Goblin guards, "For the next few days, don't let this fool be idle." The guard, upon receiving the order, stepped forward, causing the gears to creak. He held a long whip in his hand and walked toward the cage, laughing loudly as he replied, "Don't worry, boss. I'll make sure to take care of him." Seeing this, Lower looked toward Evelyn, hoping for help. But the situation before him only made him tighten his grip on the iron rod. With the matter here resolved, Lin Tian smiled joyfully and said, "Good. Now it's time to do the real work. Come with me, Evelyn." Then, he put his hands in his pockets and began walking forward. In front of Evelyn, Lin Tian silently followed behind. As he walked, his mood was very cheerful, and he spoke to everyone. "We are going to destroy the Blood Clan tribe." At this moment, the atmosphere turned dark purple, engulfing everything, making it feel as though everything was sinking into hell. Among the Goblins, a Goblin wearing a deer-horned skin cloak, bent and leaning on a cane, shakily moved forward. The leader spoke. "Leader, we are ready." Hearing this, the massive leader stood up, holding his mace, and shouted loudly to his followers, "Good! Today we will attack the Southern Blood Tribe." His words immediately stirred up the warriors, their fighting spirits soaring. His next words made them even more excited. "Let's bring the elves back and have some fun with them." He said this while smiling, and then he swung his mace powerfully, declaring with heroic spirit. When the word elves was mentioned, the entire group seemed to be injected with stimulants. All of them stirred up at once, their enthusiasm shaking the ground. "Ho ho, boss, you are mighty." While his subordinates cheered him on, a voice suddenly called out from afar, "Boss! Boss!" Hearing this, the leader turned and looked in the direction of the call, carrying his mace on his shoulder. A large Goblin, holding a huge bone, rushed towards him, pointing to the distance and shouting, "A Goblin has entered the tribe and said he wants to see you." The leader was stunned, thinking he had misheard. He shouted, "What? Someone dares to enter my territory?" From the distance, the sound of footsteps approached. The leader arrogantly watched the approaching figure, mocking, "A low-level Goblin. Where did you come from?" His subordinates, curious by nature, rushed to see who it was. Before them appeared a tall figure, about 1.8 meters tall. Just knowing his height was enough. Lin Tian stepped forward, removed the headscarf, revealing his handsome face, with a casual gaze and a smile on his lips. He said, "Blood Clan leader, I know you are a highly intelligent and powerful Goblin who is close to humans, so I came to speak with you." Seeing that the visitor was a thin, frail man who had dared to enter his territory alone, the leader's subordinates understood the situation. They quickly grabbed their weapons and lined up, prepared to defend their leader. Even if they lost, they would at least show some strength before the battle. But not one of them stood a chance against the newcomer. The leader, seeing that Lin Tian was different from them, could tell from his demeanor that he was not like the others. He then spoke up, asking, "Who are you? What kind of transformation is this?" He advanced straight into the enemy's territory without fear. Looking at him, he seemed like a god of war stepping onto the battlefield. As he leisurely walked forward, he answered, "No, I'm just a little smarter than the average Goblin." To save valuable time, Lin Tian went straight to the point. He arrogantly put his hands in his pockets and then shouted loudly, "I am the leader of the Sky Madness tribe. I want to take your leader with me." His words were a firm declaration, an announcement. "Any objections?" he asked with a laugh. The atmosphere around them turned still. After processing the words, the leaders, subordinates grabbed their weapons and surrounded Lin Tian. "Well, objections aren't a problem," the leader thought. "After all, it's my territory. Even if they object, it's only normal." Lin Tian stood still, the breeze gently blowing his cloak. He calmly spoke. "I'll give the rest of you two choices. Submit to me." Lin Tian stood straight, looking around. The Goblins were no different from the air. The pressure around him grew stronger, his hand raised, his finger pointing down as he spoke. "Or die here." His words were as calm as if he were commenting on the weather. But the scent of blood and rust made it terrifying. His hair covered part of his eyes, but his pupils gleamed with the domineering arrogance of an emperor. The leader and the Goblin, with the deer-horned skin cloak, looked at each other. Under the pressure from Lin Tian, the leader suddenly realized something. He gritted his teeth and looked at the scrawny figure in front of him. This was the person who had captured the elves. The leader of the tribe, huh? Lin Tian did not respond to his question. He cheerfully spread his arms and smiled at him. "Your loyalty is not bad. Come with me." Lin Tian seemed to offer him a sincere invitation to join his tribe. But from the leader's perspective, seeing a scrawny, weak Goblin standing here, saying such things, he thought, "What is this? What's this loyalty? Come with him? Are you joking?" Looking at the small, weak Goblin in front of him, the leader just sneered and spat out some words. "You're so stupid." He extended his massive hand, preparing to crush Lin Tian's head. It seemed as if a slight squeeze from him would crush Lin Tian's head into a watermelon. The leader found the Goblin's words irritating and began to grow annoyed. He yelled at him, "Shut up! I didn't think you'd bring yourself to my door." He moved closer, looking directly at Lin Tian's face. His massive hand gently squeezed Lin Tian's head, as if he found something amusing. He then continued, "After I kill you all elves and humans will... It's mine." The subordinates saw their boss being incredibly cool and instantly grasping the southern leader's head in his hand. They cheered and jumped, shouting, "Boss, crush him! Crush him!" Under the large hand, Lin Tian calmly said, "As expected, no need for more words. Everything that needed to be said has already been said. If you don't accept, then fine." As soon as the words finished, the leader's face turned purple with anger. His pupils became bloodshot as he stared at Lin Tian. Lin Tian remained calm and unafraid, then said, "If I didn't want to capture him alive, I wouldn't need to say so much." With a swift motion, Lin Tian performed a high jump, his blade flashing like lightning and tracing a beautiful parabolic curve. Blood sprayed out in the air, as magnificent and deadly as a firework. The leader immediately screamed in agony. "Ah!" He couldn't keep up with Lin Tian's pace. The entire sequence of actions happened too fast, too unexpectedly for him to react in time. By the time he did, it was already too late. "Ah!" His severed hand now lay on the bloody ground. His subordinates were frozen in fear, staring at the horrifying scene, their mouths agape, completely motionless. The leader staggered back a few steps, clutching his bleeding arm, howling in pain. "Ah! You disgusting bastard! Kill him!" One of the subordinates shouted angrily at Lin Tian, pointing at him. "Kill him! Avenge the boss!" "Ha ha ha!" Lin Tian replied. "I've been waiting for this moment. If you had been a second slower, it would have been truly boring." With one hand in his pocket and the other raised, his fingers moved slightly, snapping. A thin, fragile thread of light appeared, coiling around his arm and moving as if it had life. Lin Tian smiled and called out, "Go!" In the midst of the confusion, a blade stabbed straight through the heart of the Goblin with the deer horns, making him widen his eyes and drop dead, not even knowing the cause of his death. Another subordinate, seeing the sudden appearance of the blade through his chest, panicked and shouted, "How can it be silent, without a sound?" From behind, they felt a chill run down their spines. cold sweat ran down their faces. When they turned around, they saw one of Lin Tian's subordinates standing right in front of them. As he swung his spear down, he explained, "It's because of the stillness skill." Then, more of Lin Tian's subordinates appeared behind him. They immediately shouted to their teammates, "The leader has ordered to wipe out the entire Blood Tribe." The situation was clear. The Blood Tribe warriors quickly gathered to protect their leader. Lin Tian stood tall, raising his hand and commanding, "All of you, go and destroy them." Upon hearing the order, the subordinates of the Great Elder shouted in unison, "Slash! Slash! Slash! Kill! Kill! Kill!" In just a few shouts, they disappeared like ninjas, using their stillness skill. Within seconds, a huge army appeared right behind Lin Tian. The number of soldiers was so large that it made the Blood Tribe leader tremble in fear, exclaiming, "So many Goblin warriors!" He clutched his injured arm and retreated slowly, horrified as he watched his subordinates getting pierced like kebabs. Then, he realized in shock, we've fallen into his trap. But it was too late. The situation before him was cruelly real. His men couldn't withstand a single blow from the enemy's soldiers, who were no different than crushing eggs with stones. Just a few minutes passed, and his soldiers were already falling like straw. His eyes filled with rage as he glared at Lin Tian, who was advancing toward him. The leader realized that this man had tricked him into lowering his guard. Every step he took only revealed that all the plans had been carefully orchestrated by this skinny man, who had been waiting for them to fall into his trap. It was infuriating. Now, escaping alone would still give him a better chance of survival. He could always come back for revenge later. Revenge is a dish best served after years. If he fled, no one could stop him. "I'll deal with all of you later when I return," he thought. But before he fled, he needed to vent his anger first. So, the Blood Tribe leader threw a powerful punch, filled with the strength of 1,000 pounds toward Lin Tian, wanting to land one final blow before escaping. His face was contorted with fury as he shouted, "Even if I run, I will kill this ugly bastard first." Lin Tian remained calm, standing there without moving or fleeing. He crossed his arms and smirked as he watched the fist come toward him. Just as the punch neared, a soft voice echoed from afar, "Holy light cage." Immediately, floating words appeared in the air, glowing brightly like a chain. Then, a golden cage materialized from the sky, trapping the Blood Tribe leader tightly, preventing his escape. He screamed in frustration. Lin Tian stood before the cage, sneering at him. The leader's 1,000-pound punch that he intended to strike Lin Tian with was nothing in Lin Tian's eyes. He simply stood there and watched. The leader of the Blood Tribe struggled in vain, fighting desperately. No matter how hard he tried to break free, there was no scratch on him. He screamed in anger. "How cruel! This is a light attribute spell." He gritted his teeth and stared at Lin Tian, stunned, then yelled, "The Goblin has no ability to use it." His pupils widened in shock as he glared with a fierce expression. He was horrified but still wanted to rush forward to kill the person in front of him. But what was this creature? A human mage, kneeling at the feet of the scrawny man and calling him master, acting like a dog, while the scrawny man acted like a true master, praising her for being obedient. Seeing the stunned expression on the Blood Tribe leader, Lin Tian didn't care, and spoke to Everly. Everly, you really are a good dog. Once you are corrupted, you'll become stronger. I'll reward you when we return." Hearing her master's praise, Everly was overjoyed and quickly expressed her sincere gratitude. Thank you, master." From the cage, countless rays of light turned into chains, binding the Blood Tribe leader so tightly that he could not move, causing him to fall to the ground. He looked up in pain and yelled at Lin Tian, "This is so disgusting." Lin Tian, seeing that his plan had succeeded, and that everything he wanted was within reach, happily sneered and said, Heh, be a good hero for me." The Blood Tribe leader was returned to the Heavenly Crazy Tribe, where Lin Tian resided. All his subordinates quickly tied up the Blood Tribe leader. On a large stone in the prison, they stood looking down from above at the leader, bound by chains, his heavy body lying on the ground, barely breathing, with blood leaking from his legs. Lin Tian exhaled a deep breath and said, "Phew. It really took a lot of effort to subdue him." He wiped the blood from his blade with a cloth, nonchalantly gazing at his spoils of war. He continued, "Finally done. Now there is nothing that can threaten us." Inside the cage, the captured warrior gripped the iron bar, trembling with disbelief, staring at the scene in front of him, his mouth agape. That damn Goblin. How could he come back in one piece, and even capture the tribe leader? He asked himself in a flurry of questions, but no one answered him. The more he thought, the colder his heart became. Could they really have captured a hero and returned alive? How did that bastard do it? His body trembled more and more. Stepping out of the prison, Lin Tian saw his mother and Goblin laughing together. He casually handed the cloth to Goblin, reminding her of the task of fertilization, and asked her to keep an eye on Goblin for him. Goblin happily accepted the task and replied that she would do as instructed. Lin Tian glanced at his companion and pushed Ellie towards Goblin. He said indifferently, "She's yours to take care of. Ellie, you must obey well. Understood?" Ellie, startled by the sudden push, looked at Lin Tian in horror, then quickly responded, "Yes, master." Seeing this, Goblin rushed to support Ellie, preventing both of them from falling. She looked at Ellie in surprise, then quickly responded to Lin Tian, "Yes, yes." Lin Tian then took a step forward towards his elven mother. From afar, she had brought over a basin of water and was walking toward him. While wiping his hands with the cloth, Lin Tian spoke, "Later, help me dress. I want to meet a friend." Upon hearing this, the elven mother was shocked and looked at him, asking, "A friend?" Lin Tian didn't look at her. He extended his hand to massage his sore shoulders, his long hair hiding his vision. He smiled and replied, "That's right." He casually removed the cloak from his body, revealing his tall, thin figure. The cloak fell to the ground. His eyes suddenly shone brightly. Then he smirked and continued, "A very important friend. From what I observed recently, that arrogant lower must be getting reinforcements from the human race soon. The Bright Town is waiting for death. This is not Lin Tian's style. With my current strength, I could still fight with the knights. But if I encounter the Sword Saint, I will definitely die. I need some time to nurture the GOP Lin hero seed. I'm going to find someone to help me hold off the Sword Saint. There's an old saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my best ally.' It's time to meet from the Golden Dragon Mother." Lin Tian walked towards the sea. The blue sea and the cool breeze were perfect for executing his plan. He saw 2 oxen lying on the sandy beach and fell into deep thought. This place was at least 100 kilometers from the Dragon Island. He couldn't go there directly in a short time, so he had to use another method. The blood stains on the sand continued to spread, attracting seagulls looking for food. But this was precisely the plan of King Goblin, as he prepared a sumptuous meal. Lin Tian wiped the blood from his hands with the cloth and muttered to himself, "The quickest way to get to Long Island is to lead the dragon there." Looking into the distance from the sky, Lin Tian frowned, standing with his arms crossed, waiting. He didn't believe in this method. It was ineffective now. It was only a matter of time. The strong smell of blood could quickly lead the dragon to the trap, just as predicted. The sound of wings flapping cut through the air. Fast as lightning, a red-scaled dragon with a long body spread its wings and flew toward the beach, drawn by the pungent smell of fresh blood. Lin Tian quickly crawled into the belly of the cow that he had previously slaughtered. Now, he just had to wait for the dragon to fly down. Sure enough, following the smell of fresh blood, the dragon approached. Lin Tian smiled slyly, understanding the situation, and hid inside the cow's belly. The sound of wings flapping grew louder. Lin Tian felt himself rise from the ground as the dragon reached the cow. Seeing that there was no one around, the dragon quickly focused on its meal. It used its sharp claws to grab the prey and lifted it into the air before quickly flying away. Lin Tian, hiding inside, clung tightly to the inside of the cow's belly, maintaining his balance to avoid being thrown out. The excited dragon let out a roar and flapped its wings, soaring into the sky. Lin Tian felt the cool breeze rushing past his ear, and he grinned, knowing that the plan was working. The dragon flew fast and high, and in no time it had traveled over 100 kilometers, crossing many lands and the blue sea. Finally, it dropped the prey into a cave. Lin Tian, still hidden inside, only felt a slight shock from the fall. But he wasn't injured. Once the surroundings settled, he quickly crawled out of the cow's belly and stood up, brushing off the dust from his body. Everything was as expected. These dragons were not just hunting for themselves. Now that they had arrived here, it was time to move on to the next part of the plan. The next step was to find the dragon mother. As Lin Tian observed his surroundings, he suddenly noticed something following him. A strange voice echoed in the air. "There's something unusual in the food." Lin Tian froze and quickly turned around. A huge eye with a bright yellow pupil appeared in the dark cave. The oppressive atmosphere was overwhelming. After a quick observation, Lin Tian realized that the person in front of him was the friend he had been searching for, and also his target. The dragon mother stood up and looked at Lin Tian. In an instant, it seemed she remembered something. "I think I recognize you. You are the leader of Goblin, the one who attacked Brighttown. That day, what were you sneaking around my territory for?" The dragon mother looked at the small figure of the Goblin. It wasn't even enough for her to squeeze between her teeth. She scoffed and laughed, asking, "Do you think it'll eat you?" A dragon beside her, seeing prey right in front of it, salivated. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, and it exhaled puffs of steam, displaying its dominance in front of Lin Tian. Lin Tian stood in front of the dragon mother and the surrounding dragons, but he remained calm, unafraid as the dragons drew closer. Lin Tian quickly extended his hand towards the dragon mother and said, "Wait, I'm here to discuss something. We need to cooperate." Upon hearing his words, the dragon mother was astonished and exclaimed, "This is rare." She stepped down onto the stone floor and continued, "A little Goblin wants to talk cooperation with me?" Gradually, the massive form of the dragon mother began to shift into a human shape, and the dragon scales on her body slowly faded. This Goblin had helped her before, and now he was coming to discuss cooperation. How interesting. Lin Tian saw a very seductive woman appear in front of him. The dragon mother smiled with great amusement and said, "Since you want to help me, let's talk a bit and see what a small Goblin wants to cooperate on. You had the courage to come into the territory of the dragon clan, so you must have some skill." The dragon mother looked at Lin Tian, her gaze shifting from curiosity to sharpness. She slightly bent down, smiling as she continued, "If I'm satisfied, I might not eat you." It seemed that just a foolish word from him could lead to his immediate demise. The surrounding dragons, upon hearing the mention of eating, became excited, moving closer to where Lin Tian stood. Their breath billowed out in smoky puffs, and it seemed like with one snap, they could swallow him whole. Despite the dragon mother's intimidating presence, Lin Tian was confident his plan would succeed. His eyes, determined, met hers. He calmly said, "You want to take revenge on the Sword Saintess, don't you?" Seeing no immediate response from her, Lin Tian knew he had struck a nerve. The dragon mother was waiting for him to continue. "Let's join forces. What do you think? The last ambush helped you escape." As soon as he finished speaking, the dragon mother's gaze changed. She now looked at the small Goblin with great interest. "What? A low-level creature like you actually has plans to oppose the Sword Saintess? You've piqued my interest," she said, laughing. "Interesting, indeed." "Ha ha ha." The dragon mother circled Lin Tian, observing him. She folded her arms and looked at him with increasing excitement. A small Goblin daring to challenge the Sword Saintess. How amusing. She smirked and looked at him, exclaiming, "Tell me, how do you plan to deal with that bitch?" Thinking about that Sword Saintess, she said, "I'd like to tear her apart. And now someone is here to deal with her. It's as if the heavens are watching. Lin Tian turned to look at the Dragon Mother and simply replied, I just need you to send some dragon soldiers to occasionally harass the Guangming town. The Dragon Mother, curious, placed her hand on his shoulder and asked, What about you? What will you do? Lin Tian looked at the hand on his shoulder but didn't say anything. He listened as she continued. A group of small Goblin. What kind of strength do you have to think about attacking that crazy woman? The Dragon Mother's eyes were filled with interest and curiosity as she looked at this Goblin. A being like him actually wanted to take on the fire ant nest that was the Sword Saintess. Even she, as the Dragon Mother, had to endure her loss to that woman. What chance did a low-level creature like him have? This was getting more and more interesting. She walked closer to Lin Tian, smiling with great joy, and said, What do you plan to do? This is indeed exciting. She laughed heartily. She raised her finger and gently lifted his chin as if whispering to a lover. When dealing with someone like the Sword Saintess, head-on confrontation is impossible. Hearing the Dragon Mother's words, Lin Tian smiled confidently. His eyes, full of assurance, met hers as he calmly said, We must strike at the heart. Kill those around her. That's the best way to defeat her. His words instantly made the Dragon Mother very pleased. Ha ha ha, I see. So that's how it is. The Dragon Mother laughed joyfully, her hair covering her eyes, which glinted with excitement. She continued, Using a Goblin's knife to kill without losing any soldiers or troops. I like this. Seeing her reaction, Lin Tian knew the negotiation had been successful. Let's consider this a successful negotiation, the Dragon Mother said, smiling softly as she added, Of course. She extended her hand toward Lin Tian and slowly moved her body closer to him, her voice soft and drifting as she continued, I didn't expect a small Goblin to have such intelligence inside. As the Dragon Mother's hand moved toward him, Lin Tian became alert. Her eyes were now focused on him, and she looked at the tall, slender Goblin with intense desire. She traced her finger down his chin and said, The more I look, the more I like you. I have a gift I'd like to reward you with. Lin Tian, standing in front of the Dragon Mother, smiled smugly. Despite the feeling of her claws against his face, he thought to himself, The Dragon Mother in mating season really is something. The Dragon Mother glanced down at the small figure of Lin Tian and coldly snorted. She said, Yes, your tiny body really isn't big enough. After both parties reached an agreement, the Dragon Mother turned to her subordinates, scanning the surroundings with her eyes. Lin Tian, naturally, took the opportunity to observe the dragon cave more clearly. He crossed his arms and scanned the place thoroughly. After a moment, as if thinking about something, the Dragon Mother suddenly laughed and said, Well then, I'll reward you with another gift. She stroked her chin, pondered for a moment, and then looked at him, adding, Which one should I choose? The scene shifted back to the wild tribe of the male protagonist. After a period of improvement, the lives of the people there had become similar to those in human towns. In the center of the tribe, a large wooden crucifix was built to judge those guilty of serious crimes. The one lucky enough to be hanged was the leader of the knights, Lower, from Guangming town. Around him, goblins in armor, wielding weapons, patrolled. Under Lin Tian's rule, all pregnant elves could freely move within the area. The scorching heat and long imprisonment had made their minds unstable, and their rationality was growing more and more erratic. The greatest hope they held on to was the arrival of the Sword Saintess Knight Order to rescue them from this suffering. But after so long, the Knight Order still hadn't come to their aid. Another day passed, and their minds were on the brink of collapse. If I stay here much longer, he'll go mad. I must escape, he thought. But how could he escape? The place was full of goblins, and he was nearly at the end of his strength. Suddenly, his head jerked up. The goblins usually had limited stature. If he could use this to his advantage, wouldn't he be able to escape in the blink of an eye? Just thinking about it made his tired eyes sparkle with hope. He looked up at the sky, furrowing his brows in exhaustion. Goblins were small, and from above, he might be able to... Was he hallucinating from all the torture? No. What was that? He squinted his eyes to focus better, and it came closer. What was that? How could this be? His pupils widened in surprise, shifting from confusion to shock, and then to horror. A dragon appeared in front of him, flapping its wings, flying toward him. Remembering how he had once been caught and brought here for killing a dragon in the town, now, imprisoned by goblins in the forest, he still saw a dragon. This felt like living through a nightmare all over again. He looked toward it. The dragon roared as it approached. There, the four limbs were tied to the crucifix, unable to move. Struggling was useless. An invisible fear rushed into his heart, cold to the bone. He kept thrashing around and screamed, "Dragon! Flying! Dragon! Flying dragon! Let me go! I don't want to die from the dragon's curse!" The goblin soldiers observing the situation were suddenly distracted by his loud shouting. Some of the guards sneered. "You're just a prisoner in the tribe, and you still scream like this? Who do you think you are?" All the goblins in the tribe quickly gathered and formed a defense. As they saw the dragon getting closer, they instinctively backed away. The leader, holding a spear, shouted a warning. The sound of the alarm echoed throughout the tribe, drawing everyone's attention. In the commotion, the elves looked up in fear and shouted, "It's a dragon! Why is it here?" Among them, someone with sharp eyes quickly noticed something and shouted, "Wait! Look on the dragon's body! There seems to be someone!" Immediately, all eyes in the tribe shifted toward the figure on the back of the red dragon. The figure's clothes fluttered in the wind. This figure seemed very familiar. The fiery red shape drew closer and landed on the ground. The dragon opened its mouth wide, revealing sharp teeth, and roared loudly. Its wings, spanning several dozen meters, continued to tear through the wind. All the goblin soldiers held weapons in their hands. Although they knew they were outmatched, they thought it better to fight than to just wait to be attacked by the dragon. When the dragon's sharp, fiery red claws finally touched the ground, its enormous wings gradually folded. On its back appeared a familiar figure. A regal figure descended from the dragon's back leisurely. He put his right hand in his pocket and lifted his left hand to remove the scarf. A familiar voice rang out, "Im back." This made everyone at the scene freeze, their mouths agape. The subordinates shouted, "Boss! Boss!" They couldn't believe their eyes. They blinked several times. It really was their boss. But wait. Beside the boss was the red dragon. It seemed that the dragon was completely tamed by the boss, standing obediently beside him. The next sight made their eyes widen in shock. The boss gently patted the dragon's head, looking at it with affectionate eyes, as if it were a pet. He spoke to it softly, like speaking to a lover. "Rest here, and don't wander off." Goodness, this was too shocking. If this news doesn't make it to the tribe's hot topics, it would truly be a waste. Witnessing this scene today was incredible. Look, the dragon is so obedient. It breathes heavily, as if responding to the Grand Elder. Its eyes look very gentle, as if saying, "Okay, boss. Where are my brothers? Where's the water? Look here. This is too shocking." The goblin soldiers, upon hearing the alarm, ran out immediately. They witnessed the impressive sight of the Grand Elder descending from the back of the dragon. This was their pride, Lin Tian, now completely their idol in their hearts. Under the cheers of the crowd, the subordinates shouted, "Long live the Grand Elder! So handsome!" The goblin soldiers gathered around, laughing and congratulating each other for making the wise decision to follow the Grand Elder. However, unlike the joyful atmosphere here, on the crucifix, Lower bit his jaw tightly. His long hair obscured his vision, and his breath came in gasps. It seemed that this was the only way to calm himself a little. His eyes darted toward the goblin soldier. His gaze was filled with terror. No, this can't be. The goblin soldier I know cannot have such talent. This man, is he really a goblin? But the truth stood clearly before him. The one standing in the middle of the crowd, hailed as a god, was indeed a goblin. How strange. How could he feel that the gears of the world were turning? Everything around him was changing. This only made Luer want to escape this place as soon as possible. He would die here. Knights, quickly come and save me, he thought. They moved toward the bright plaza in the town. After the dragon's attack and the goblin assault, everything had been repaired, and the town had returned to its peaceful state. All the people of the town gathered at the city gate. Their eyes were fixed on the majestic warhorse. The emblem on the iron armor was unmistakable. It was the royal emblem. Only the royal family had this symbol. Then, a whole army followed behind, marching proudly. The Royal Knight Brigade approached the temple. When they saw who was standing there, the knights quickly dismounted their horses, bowed respectfully, and knelt down in unison, shouting, "Saint Sword!" Upon seeing the royal knights arrive, the Saint Sword descended from her horse and bowed to her. The Saint Sword's daughter didn't beat around the bush. She immediately waved her hand, her expression cold and dignified, and said, "Time waits for no one. No need for formalities. Proceed with the ritual. With the heart of the Savior, love for peace, hatred for evil. Let's release the disciples and the wizard Ely." The saintess quickly gave the next order. She quickly thought of a way to arrange the rescue plan. The scene shifted back to the deep forest. The system continued to display the following content. The system's life simulation was starting. The current storyline was about the third-generation Goblins' evolution. Through a surprise attack on the Bright Fortress and the Bloodfang tribe, you achieved decent results. By resisting the Saint Sword and the human royal family, you led the Goblins and Everly to level up in the Enchanted Forest. A month later, you reached level 50. Goblin reached level 60. Ely reached level 45. Option 1. Your strength is not yet enough. Continue killing monsters in the forest to level up. Option 2. Find a way to capture more prisoners and breed more goblins. Option 3. Accelerate the leveling progress and advance straight to 1 month later. Evaluation plus 10. Option 3. Accelerate the leveling progress and advance straight to 1 month later. Evaluation plus 20. The consciousness is within the system. After reading the information, Lin Tian fell into deep thought. He reached up to stroke his chin and wondered, could it really be like this? The key point now is about the development of the goblin race? So the meaning of this is that the third option appears, which means that during this period, there will be no surprise attacks from the Saint Sword. If it's confirmed that there is no threat during this time, then there's no need to pay too much attention to it. Just skip this period. He quickly tapped on the third option to accelerate the leveling process, advancing straight to 1 month later. Evaluation plus 20. As soon as the action ended, the system appeared to activate time acceleration. A beam of light quickly gathered and illuminated the entire space. Lin Tian waited, standing still, waiting for the result. After a moment, the system displayed the content. Summary. It is no longer possible to harvest enough experience in this enchanted forest. Not enough experience to harvest? Lin Tian frowned as he stared at the content, his teeth unconsciously clenching. What does this represent? Before he could process his thoughts, the system updated the content. Evaluation 20, full score 100. Reward. Life points times 20. The life simulation this time has been completed. Time progress. 1 month. Lin Tian was stunned, staring with wide eyes at the system in disbelief. Before he could react, the system reminded him that time progress was now 1 month later. He woke up in his own room. Lin Tian rubbed his temples, the unease in his heart still lingering. He hadn't yet adjusted to this feeling. Is this the feeling of jumping through time? How strange. Lin Tian supported himself. He sat up, his mind now clearer than before. In front of him appeared a line of text congratulating him on reaching level 50. HP 850, Strength 270, Defense 300, Total Power 1000. He glanced at the displayed stats, his lips curling into a satisfied smile, though something still felt lacking. He muttered, "The attributes have increased a bit, but the total power hasn't increased much. As he was deep in thought, a sudden shout pulled Lin Tian back to reality. "Boss!" He looked up and saw Goblin hurrying toward him. She stopped in place, catching her breath, pointing outside with a look of deep concern and said, "Something's happened. Many goblins, just born, have already died." As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Tian immediately stood up, frowning, and said, "What? Let's go outside and check the situation." The sound of mournful crying reached his ears from afar, filling him with sorrow. As they got closer, he saw the elven spirits, who had just gone through childbirth, with their newborns already lifeless, lying on the ground. Some elves were holding their children in their arms, crying bitterly, while others looked at the cold bodies of their children, covering their faces with tears. The sounds of sobbing continued endlessly. Seeing this scene completely shocked Lin Tian. He stood there stunned, unable to understand what had happened. His wide eyes looked at the newborns who had just come into the world, only to return to the earth. His heart was panicked. How could this happen? The previous generation was so healthy. Why is it like this now? He squatted down to look at the dead infants, lost in thought. He softly asked, "Where did the mistake happen?" The matriarch of the elf tribe, who was comforting the others, turned to look at him with confusion and softly replied, "I don't know what happened. This generation, only these three are still alive, but they are very weak." Looking at the surviving children, their frail bodies barely hanging on, she wasn't sure if they would survive. The matriarch's gaze turned filled with deep concern. As she was comforting them, a sudden mad laugh echoed. Both of them turned toward the sound, and saw Lower, laughing maniacally, shouting, "Ha! That stupid goblin, no brain, still dreaming of nurturing powerful offspring? Look at this idiot. What does he know?" Lin Tian raised an eyebrow, his gaze indifferent, looking at him. "It seemed that you know the cause?" Lower smugly raised his chin, looking at Lin Tian with a provocative expression. "The goblins are a lowly race, and will always remain so. Ha! Ha! It's as if I'm showing mercy by enlightening these brainless fools." He laughed mockingly and shouted, "Goblin, the higher the level, the harder it is for the newborns to survive. You think you can rely on reproductive ability to dominate the world? Ha! Foolish. You don't even know what you need to know." Lin Tian now understood. So that's it. He had not thought of it before, but now it was clear. He smiled and said, "Well, I should thank you." He chuckled, seeing Lower looking so smug, as though he had vented all his anger. Lin Tian stood with his arms crossed, watching him. This guy still thought he was the proud knight from the past, but to Lin Tian, he was no different from a dead man. But thanks to him, Lin Tian now knew what to do. Although the timing wasn't perfect, he spoke in a deep voice. "But this time, you're right, though a bit late." Lin Tian turned his back with indifference and gestured to the tall goblin. "You handle him from now on, don't play around." The goblin's eyes immediately lit up, and he grinned as he looked toward Lower. He gave a bloodthirsty laugh and said, "Ha ha ha, thank you, boss." He took a few baby oil bottles from nearby and advanced closer. Seeing the situation was off, Lower struggled desperately to break free from the bindings and fight the demon. He could feel the malicious eyes of the guard and the baby oil bottles in the goblin's hands, which made Lower imagine his tragic future. Lower screamed toward Lin Tian, his body trembling in fear. His jaw clenched so tight that blood dripped from his mouth. His eyes stared at the goblin's filthy claws, now slick with oil, moving toward him, which deepened his feelings of humiliation and helplessness. Lin Tian walked away, deep in thought about the future of the tribe, completely ignoring Lower's pitiful screams. Was he suffering from some psychological trauma? It wasn't something Lin Tian was concerned with right now. What mattered was time. There was not enough of it. It was already too late to nurture new heroes, but for now, a large number of goblins was needed. This was another difficult problem. where could new recruits be found? If he didn't face Sword Saint and the others, victory would be nearly impossible. How could he level up the goblins? As he stroked his chin in contemplation, a strange wind blew from behind. Something was approaching. The sound grew louder, and soon, a massive shadow appeared, its eyes glowing brightly, staring fixedly at him. He sensed a great power behind him. Lin Tian quickly turned around, full of caution. Upon seeing the dragon he had brought back earlier, Lin Tian quickly relaxed, no longer on guard. The dragon approached him as if it wanted to be petted, rubbing its head against him. Lin Tian stood there, confused, unable to understand the situation, just watching as it rubbed against him. After a moment, he touched its head helplessly, seeing its big, sparkling eyes. It looked at him, and something felt off. He smiled awkwardly, feeling speechless. "What's going on with you?" he thought. The female dragon would transform into a humanoid form during its mating season. It was a special situation. The special situation was that the dragon's claws would lose their scales and transform into slender legs, moving toward him. The huge dragon's head also began to change. In the blink of an eye, a young girl's face appeared. Within a short time, a girl with 2 buns on either side of her head and a sexy body appeared right in front of him. Her big, lively eyes stared at him, as if she were a lover, moving closer. Lin Tian remembered the cryptic smile of the Dragon Mother and shuddered, feeling scared. So this is the Dragon Mother, he thought. He shivered, unconsciously stepping back. What's with this intimidating pose of hers? It's too scary. Sweat was pouring down. It turned out that this was the special situation the Dragon Mother had deliberately left for him. Before Lin Tian had the chance to react, she quickly pounced on him like a starving wolf. With his strength, there was no way to resist. In an instant, he was knocked down. The situation was now: woman on top, man beneath. Lin Tian knew that even though he was the national hero in his tribe, he still didn't want to be looked at like this. "Please have some respect," he said with dry lips. "Go drink some water and stop looking at me like that." He was being evaluated. "Let me treat you to some bubble tea, okay?" After some negotiation, Lin Tian suddenly realized something. The system prompt appeared. New achievement unlocked. Congratulations. HP increased by 1,500. Strength value increased by 520. Defense value increased by 1,200.